A Turkish tank destroyed by other anti-Assad forces. Can Syria's war get any messier? Good evening. As Turkey carries out a campaign of airstrikes in Syria, it's increasingly clashing with Kurdish militias. 25 killed in the latest bombing. Meanwhile, Kurdish forces hit a Turkish tank with a rocket, killing a soldier. And yet both sides are US allies. Syria's conflict becomes further complicated. Also tonight. As BHS stores close for the final time, Sir Philip Green's role in the firm's demise is still under intense scrutiny. Nico Rosberg wins the Belgian Grand Prix, cutting Lewis Hamilton's championship lead to 9 points. And you might not have heard of boccia, but it's one of the fastest growing Paralympic sports. We meet the British team who are hoping for medal success at Rio. At least 25 people have been killed in northern Syria as Turkey ramps up its bombardment of Kurdish positions near the border city of Jarablus. This new front in the Syrian war growing ever bloody as Turkish forces advance into territory once held by so-called Islamic State. Syrian forces are still focusing their firepower on Aleppo. 16 people were killed in yesterday's barrel bomb attack on a funeral wake for children. A warning, there are some distressing images in Kamian Zerem's report.
A Turkish tank destroyed by Kurdish forces, both fighting for control of Syrian borderlands around Jarablus. In the smaller villages that dot these hilltops, another day of fighting left dozens more dead. Turkey is trying to stop Kurdish separatists from securing unbroken Syrian territory from far west to far east. But the Kurds provide a crucial northern barrier against IS. It casts the Kurds as both friend and foe. Turkey supporting the rebels of the Free Syria Army, who today displayed a weapons cache they'd seized in Jarablus. It was unclear whether from Kurdish or IS fighters. Complicated it is indeed, but some things require few words to explain. Images of children, too distressing to broadcast in full. The result of President Bashar al-Assad's barrel bombs and napalm, unleashed overnight on civilians in Homs.
This child was burned by napalm, others suffocated. The area was hit by 12 airstrikes and we're using out-of-date medicine.
In Aleppo, different tactics, similar outcome. These ruptured buildings in Bab al-Nairab tell nothing of the detail. Here had been a wake for dead children, then a barrel bomb. Elsewhere in Aleppo, in Mardi, more of the awful same. After the first barrel bomb yesterday afternoon, the helicopters waited, then came back to drop more.
The helicopters dropped another barrel bomb which hit the ambulances and rescuers. They're targeting medical staff and rescuers, so they can't save anyone.
Will the proposed ceasefire ever materialize, with 250,000 people in Aleppo effectively under siege, low on food, medicine and water? Fierce fighting continues for control of the south of the city, as well as disputes over how and where to bring in aid. Some rebels apparently threatening to sabotage convoys if they arrive via Assad-held supply routes. But consider the lessons of Deraa and ask, where does this end? The once rebel-held suburb of Damascus, forced after years of bombardment to surrender. Thousands of civilians removed this weekend to the anti-Assad heartland of Idlib. No one from the UN or Red Cross to monitor or oversee this mass movement of people into an uncontrolled unknown.
After 4 years of siege, shelling, bombing and barrel bombing pushed us to the limits, and we had no choice but to get out. It was the hardest moment I've ever tested. living there was not like living any place ever. It's like you left your father or mother.
In the propaganda videos, the Free Syria Army claim to be uncowed. But how long can Syria tolerate this intractable war, torn apart from within and without, showing few signs of resolution?
Well, with me now is Professor Fawaz Gerges, who's a Professor of International Relations at the London School of Economics and also the author of ISIS: A History. Welcome to the programme. First of all, we've got this situation now where it seems US-backed allies are fighting each other. How do we make sense of what's going on?
I mean, it really further complicates an already complicated and protracted Syrian civil war. So you have Turkey and you have the Syrian Kurdish rebels, who basically are both allies of the United States here, fighting each other. I think what we need to understand is that Turkey's military intervention, direct military intervention, even though Turkey says its primary goal is to really fight ISIS, the primary target of Turkey is basically, or are the Kurds. What Turkey wants to prevent the Kurds from really linking their areas in north and western Syria and establishing an autonomous region. Because Turkey fears that if the Kurds establish an autonomous region, this would have major implication on the insurgency inside Turkey. But what this tells you a great deal is that the complexity of the fight inside Syria itself.
So how is the US or even NATO supposed to respond to this?
Very difficult. I hope that the United States does not really sacrifice the Kurds on the altar of its basically strategic interest with Turkey. Turkey is a member, it has the second largest army in NATO after the United States. The reality is the Americans have made it very clear that they do not really want all-out confrontation. But how do you separate the two combatants? Here now you have Turkey, you have Iran, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Russia, you have the United States, are all involved in Syria. How do you resolve such a complicated situation? The blood, shedding continues inside Syria. This tells you, Fatima, how difficult it is to find a political solution to a 5.5 years of civil war that has taken the lives of more than 300,000 Syrians. You're talking about really 50% of the Syrian people are either refugees or basically internally displaced.
John Kerry is talking about progress being made in talks on Syria. In the meantime, we're seeing absolutely devastating pictures of children. Really, something has to happen now.
Well, everyone says, something has to happen. The reality is the international community has really let Syria down. This is really a dark stain on the conscience of the international community. Look at this irony. Turkey, for the last year, has been criticizing Russia for bombing the so-called moderate opposition as opposed to bombing ISIS. Look what Turkey is doing now. Most of the airstrikes by Turkey are targeting the Kurds rather than ISIS. In fact, when Turkey intervened, along with other Syrian rebels, against Jarablus, Jarablus was a major city controlled by ISIS. ISIS did not fire a single shot. It pulled out of the city, and now you have Turkey versus the Kurds. This tells you, and this is to come back to your critical question, the reason why ISIS has not been defeated, because the regional powers and the global powers, basically the rivalries between the regional powers really are preventing the focus on being on ISIS itself.
Incredibly complicated for us, Gerges, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much. Now, for 88 years, they were a mainstay of the high street. Now, the last remaining BHS stores have closed their doors for good. The demise of the company has affected 11,000 jobs and thousands more pensions. Former owner Sir Philip Green has borne the brunt of public anger. But in the stores themselves, it was a scene of empty shelves and the hunt for a final bargain, as Simeon Brown reports.
It's a dark day for Britain's High Street, as one of its biggest names said goodbye after 88 years. This branch in Walthamstow is one of the last to close its doors.
So inside it's surprisingly busy, and it feels like there's more people than there is products. Everything here has been stripped down. Everything here is on sale, even the display casing, and you do get a sense that it's the end of an era.
The closure of BHS means the loss of 11,000 jobs, including the jobs of these two.
At first it was devastating. When we first heard it was absolutely devastating. The news,
everybody was sort of, their minds were thinking, you could tell what their minds are working out.
But for these staff, the story is not one of tragedy, but mismanagement. And they lay the blame at one man's feet.
Philip Green mainly because he's not put any money into it.
I don't think he's entitled to be called sir, what he's done. Put 11,000 people out of a job. I mean, what good's he done?
Especially when he's got the money and he's got the lifestyle that he's got, you know.
I mean,
is he bothered about us? No.
I mean, he's got 3 yachts or boats, but you can only sail on one.
Under the leadership of Sir Philip Green and later Dominic Chappell, the company grew a deficit on the staff pension scheme to over £500 million, meaning staff who've paid in face uncertainty. Now Sir Philip Green is facing another trip to Parliament as MPs prepare a new investigation into his management.
We're starting a new select committee inquiry. We'll be continuing to look at the effects of his stewardship on BHS. We're extending that to Arcadia, because some of the Arcadia companies look as though they're going the same way as BHS.
So where is Sir Philip Green as the ship he captained for over a decade prepares to sink? On board his £100 million yacht. Today he's not answering questions, but he has said he was sad and sorry about the collapse and promised to help sort the pension deficit, although he's yet to commit to anything specific. Dominic Chappell is the man Philip Green sold BHS to just last year. He's rejected calls to return the £1 million he made from the company. In the eyes of some staff here, neither man appears to be going down with the ship. It's at branches like this one, where the decisions of its former owners will be felt. The brand itself will live on as an internet company, and could yet return. But for now, BHS joins the list of iconic names to leave our high street.
Museums across Italy are donating their proceeds to help rebuild the communities devastated by Wednesday's earthquake. Many historic buildings and churches were destroyed, along with thousands of homes. A prosecutor investigating the tragedy has said that cheap, shoddy renovations could be partly to blame for the high number of deaths. Colombia's main rebel group, the FARC, will begin a definitive ceasefire at midnight tonight, with government forces joining the truce. The two sides ended 52 years of conflict by signing a historic peace agreement in Havana earlier this week, hailed by President Santos as the beginning of the end to the suffering, pain and tragedy of war. Colombian voters will decide whether to ratify the accord next month. Now, Donald Trump has given new details about how he plans to tackle immigration, pledging to crack down on people who overstay their visas. Earlier this week, the Republican candidate promised to rein back on his plan to deport 11 million illegal immigrants from the US. But at a campaign speech in Iowa, he avoided any direct answers on the issue.
We're going to build a great wall on the border, and we're going to institute nationwide E-Verify, stop illegal immigrants from accessing welfare and entitlements, and develop an exit entry, and you know what that is, exit entry system, to ensure those who overstay their visas that they're quickly removed.
2 pilots have been arrested on suspicion of being under the influence of alcohol just before they were due to fly a passenger jet from Glasgow to the US. Concerns were raised about the pair just before the 9 a.m. United Airlines flight to Newark was due to take off. The men, both Americans, are expected to appear in court tomorrow. Formula One and Nico Rosberg has won the Belgian Grand Prix to cut Lewis Hamilton's championship lead to 9 points. Hamilton finished third despite a penalty forcing him to start at the back of the grid. Jack Taylor watched the race.
Formula One, back from its summer break. The rivalry between Rosberg and Hamilton resumed. One half of that rivalry faced a near impossible task.
Lights out, away we go!
Hamilton, punished for using too many engine parts, started at the back of the grid. He wasn't there long. A dramatic start led to several crashes, allowing Hamilton to climb from 21st to 5th. The chaos on the track stopped the race. After it restarted, Hamilton weaved his way to 3rd, just 2 places behind Rosberg.
Nice work, Lewis. Nice work. So we've got Ricciardo.
Despite Hamilton's recovery, Rosberg was in total control. The German looked certain to claim a win that would cut Hamilton's championship lead.
High teens on Friday.
It left Hamilton trying to limit the damage. He held on to third place, but couldn't pass Ricciardo to reach second. Rosberg claimed victory, but Hamilton was also in the mood to celebrate. The British driver keeps his championship lead with 8 races left this season.
Football, and Manchester City are top of the Premier League after beating West Ham 3-1. Raheem Sterling gave City the lead early in the first half after a clever passing move before a powerful header made it 2-0. West Ham scored in the second half, but a second Sterling goal completed a comfortable victory. Cycling, and Britain's Chris Froome has fallen further behind in the race to win this year's Vuelta a España. Spaniard David de la Cruz won today's stage 9. Froome is now 4th in the overall standings. The British cyclist is aiming to become the first man for 38 years to win the Tour de France and Vuelta a España in the same season. Now, it was played in ancient Greece throughout the Middle Ages, and some say Sir Francis Drake was having a go at it when the Spanish Armada sailed into view. Boccia has been described as the earliest game ever played. It's got echoes of bowls, snooker and even darts. It's now one of the fastest growing Paralympic sports. And our sports reporter Jordan Jarrett Bryan has been to meet some of Britain's players as they prepare for the Rio Games.
It's oh so quiet.
No noise, minimal movement, but minds at work. What Boccia lacks in sound and speed, it makes up for in intelligence and precision. In this sport, silence is golden.
And so peaceful until
the way to describe it, if you start to look at the sport, it's the precision of darts with the mindset of chess played on a badminton court.
Boccia is a simple game, best compared to bowls or even snooker. The white jack is thrown first with the aim of getting your balls as close to the jack as possible.
Yeah, CV. Once you start to get into the sport and look at the strategies, you really appreciate the moves, how they work together and the teamwork and so on. So I challenge anyone to throw a boccia ball with the level of accuracy these guys have.
The GB team have gathered at their training base in Sheffield for one of the last sessions before they head for Brazil. And after achieving a silver and bronze in London, these guys are now ready to go one better.
It wouldn't be a surprise to me if we come away with the gold. In every classification we've got opportunities. Our BC3s have been coming up the rankings year on year. They were silver in the World Championships only 2 years ago. So it's not much step just to go one further.
All competitors have varying degrees of cerebral palsy or other conditions affecting motor skills. So the sport is divided into 4 categories. Those with no use of their hands and feet will compete with a ramp and head pointer. But this is a lot harder than it looks. The skill comes in the timing, direction and pressure applied. The squad is a mixture of experience with the likes of Nigel Murray heading into his 5th and final games, alongside characters like former world champion David Smith.
I'm quite a flamboyant player, so I sort of the analysts and all that sort of stuff. I'm better if I don't think about it and just do the shots. I'm sort of a flair, so I'm sort of more Ronnie O'Sullivan than sort of John Higgins.
Team GB surpassed their medal target to national acclaim, but our Paralympics GB feeling the pressure more than ever to match theirs of 121 medals.
I don't believe it's put any added pressure on us at all. We know that we can go out there and if we perform to our best and deliver like we can, we'll bring the success and match anything that Olympic athletes have done. Paralympic sport is elite sport, top level sport, and we always believe that the Olympics is just a warm-up for the true sport, which is the Paralympic Games.
All the talk of slow ticket sales and empty stadiums at the Paralympics shouldn't be a problem for Boccia, as it's one of the few sports Brazil are competitive in, winning 3 golds in 2012 and sure to draw in huge crowds.
Now, anyone with an internet profile knows about trolls, people who post inflammatory comments online, often anonymously. It's becoming an increasing problem, one that largely goes unpunished. A recent report shows less than 1 in 8 reported internet crimes have resulted in charges. For most celebrities, it's a sad yet expected part of the job. Just this week, American actress Leslie Jones was subjected to some particularly abusive, racist and misogynist hate. She's successful, sassy and has recently been saving the world from the paranormal.
Oh, hell no, the devil is a liar! Get out of my friend, ghost! Ow, that's gonna leave a mark! The power of pain compels you!
But now she's fighting a much more personal battle. This week, hackers infiltrated the actor's personal website, replacing it with racist slurs and apparently personal information. She took her website down, but it's back up again and she's on Twitter with her normal comical zeal. It's no laughing matter, though, and she's not the only one. Michelle Marie faced a barrage of online abuse after she guest-hosted the Twitter account @Island. She introduced herself as a mother, blogger and plus-size model. But within minutes the bullying started, many using anonymous accounts. "You are fat and ugly. If this is Island now, I'm not visiting anymore," one of many abusive tweets. The site says it was forced to block 115 accounts from countries all over the world. Twitter has defended the platform, saying safety is a top priority and that it is investing in tools that allow Twitter to identify and take faster action on abuse. So why were these women targeted in apparently orchestrated campaigns of attack? Is it because they're women, black, have a powerful platform? I've been speaking to Michelle Marie and she described how the abuse started.
Yeah, I mean, I took over the account about 8 a.m. on the Monday morning, and by 8:30 a.m. the abuse already started coming in. And at that point, I'd barely said much about myself, and there was just immediate kind of anger at the fact that a black person was representing an Irish account.
What sort of abuse were you getting, and how did it make you feel?
There was just a barrage of just hate. I can't call it anything other than pure hate. Everything from, go back to Africa, you don't belong here, to just pure vitriol.
It didn't seem to be Irish people that were actually tweeting this abuse saying go home. What do you know about the people who were sending you these tweets?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware from the people who interacted with the trolls, they did seem to be coming from America mostly. People who were just pro-white and seemingly purposely sought out their latest target.
Now, we've spoken to those who run that Twitter account that you took over for the week. They say that the abuse you got is unprecedented. Why do you think you were singled out?
I think being black and plus size and, being English but running an Irish account, I was an easy target for the people who want to be, racist, sexist, xenophobic, whatever it may be.
You took the decision to leave the Twitter account for a bit and then come back. Some people might say, why not just walk away, step away from Twitter and the abuse will stop?
I was very tempted to. At the end of Monday, it had completely taken its toll on me. So I was very tempted to just, throw the towel in and walk away. But I felt like that wasn't okay. That would be letting the trolls win, and I really didn't want that.
At the moment, this is very much an online phenomenon or a Twitter phenomenon. Do you worry that this sort of abuse will lead to black women feeling worried about speaking out on any public platform?
I think overall it's shown that we can't just freely speak anymore, that there are people out there who are just wanting to tear us down. So I think in some ways that makes us more determined to keep speaking, but we need to go into it, mindfully, knowing that if we put ourselves in those kind of positions of power and positions of strength, that there are going to be people who feel threatened by that and are going to go out of their way to try and tear us down.
So what needs to be done? Does Twitter need to do more?
I do feel Twitter should be more accountable. I mean, as far as I'm aware, they have suspended some of the worst accounts, but I still feel that these trolls and these people are just getting away with it because there's no true consequence for their actions. And I really feel that, especially as it seems so rife on Twitter particularly, that they should try and step up to it a bit more.
Michelle Marie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And a reminder of tonight's main news. Turkish forces and their allies have advanced further into northern Syria and bombarding positions held by Kurdish militia. We're back tomorrow at 7. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.